Hello everybody, Justin here, and I'm so excited to be showing you guys today the brand new images from the Underwater Buddies limited edition box by Kindred stamps. I'm going to be coloring up each of the 7 characters that are provided on the 4x8 stamp set, and we're going to have little coloring tutorials for you to find out how you can color them up, or maybe just spark some inspiration for what might work best for you. So I figured that it would make the most sense if we focus on this little rectangle pants man and get him all situated for his little coloring. So of course he is a little scrubber, so we're gonna start with some yellow. When I like to color, I like to start from dark and go to light. So we're gonna start with some Y08. And for the Y08, I'm gonna go ahead and anywhere I think that there might be a little bit of a shadow, like this far left edge, I'm gonna go ahead and add it in. We're gonna go closest to his little sleeve on his arm. We're gonna go ahead, we're gonna do his right side as well. Down the right side. And then we're also going to do on the other side of his body, because there's a little bit of an angle or a corner, we're gonna make this dark as well. And I actually want this little corner piece to be a little bit darker looking than the rest of his main body. All right, we'll do a little bit of his arm. We'll just connect the bottom and the top parts. I'm also going to go ahead around his cheeks and add some of this darker yellow. We're gonna go under his nose as well. And just doing a quick once over. I think that for right now, we're good. So, oh, you know what? He's also got a little bit of his leg showing. So I'm just gonna do the top and bottom pieces of the legs. Okay, next color we're gonna move on to is Y04, which is going to be our mid-tone. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna kind of carry those shadows out, which is so interesting when you're talking about yellows to talk about shadows, because yellow is such a naturally bright color. So we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna carry each of these out. We're also going to be coloring these twice. And what I mean by that is I'm gonna repeat each of the colors again to get a really nice smooth blend. So if you miss it the first time, you can, of course, since this is a video, you can hit pause and go back to it, or you can just catch it on the second go around, if whatever you prefer. I'm gonna do a little bit more yellow on here. And notice how I am kind of coloring around the little holes, just because we're gonna color those with some different colors after we finish the bulk of his body. All right, last color I'm going to use for the main part of his body is Y02, which is canary yellow. So I'm just gonna use this as my main yellow. We're gonna carry the yellows out. He's such a bright, cheery yellow. Alrighty. Just kind of finishing off all these colors. Now, of course, because I'm coloring with Copic markers, I did go ahead and stamp these images in an alcohol-safe ink. Maybe I should have started by saying that. However, if you guys have not started coloring yet, make sure you're stamping these out in an alcohol-safe ink, just because you don't want to see any sort of smearing, which does happen with non-alcohol marker safe inks. All right, no one likes to start from scratch either. I also like to heat set my images as well, just to make sure that my ink is dry. Okay, so his once around with his body color is taken care of, so we're gonna go ahead and do it a second time. So I'm going back to my Y08, and I'm gonna make sure that this Y08 is nice and bold. So it's kind of like a thicker shadow area, just because I want to make sure you can see the highlights and the shadows. All right, we're gonna go on his other side. As you can see, I am rotating my paper Just so I'm coloring at an angle that's the most comfortable for me. I encourage you to do the same, because when you color at a comfortable angle, your image is just going to turn out even better because your hand's more comfortable. All right, we're going to go under his nose, under his cheeks. All right, you gotta do his legs again. All righty. I'm gonna take a quick drink of water. Now we're gonna move on to some Y04. All right, Y04, I apologize, it's a little off center. Y04, we're gonna go ahead and bring that yellow out. Now, if you get a little bit of the yellow in his little scrubber holes or whatever you want to call them, totally okay. We're going to go over them. I'm just trying to avoid them the best I can. But if I get a little bit in there, I'm not going to panic, because I'll be able to blend it out later. All right. Now, before I go ahead with my final color, I am going to add a little bit of blush to this guy. So I'm going to go in with some R24, which is prawn. And for his cheeks, I'm just going to kind of trace around the inside of the cheek. All right. Next, I'm going to move on to some R22, which is light prawn. Just kind of carrying out that color a little bit more. And then finish it with some R21, which is sardonyx. Alrighty. Just kind of making sure it blends nicely into the yellow part of him. We're gonna color over it a little to get it nice and blended. All right, so Y02, which is canary yellow. Going in, blending those colors out, going over his cheeks just to add a little bit of that yellow to that blush color. Really helps blend it and make it look a little bit more natural. As natural as this little talking sea critter can be, you know? All right, going back under. Making sure I'm getting a solid layer of this. All right. And what I'm going to do real quickly is take my R21 once again and just kind of go over his cheeks, just because some of that yellow did dilute it out. I want to make sure it's maintaining some of that pinkiness. All right, let's do his little dots. So what we're going to do for this is we're going to start with some Y28, which is a lionette gold. And I'm just going to color kind of like the left side of each circle. Alrighty. Get a nice little shadow. Then we're going to go in with some Y26, which is mustard. And just kind of bring that gold color out. Still trying to keep it on the one side just to create a little bit of a shadow. And then we're going to finish this off with some Y23. You know, actually, no, not Y23. We're going, yeah, we'll go ahead. We'll do Y23. That'll be okay. Just because we want to keep them dark. I'm so sorry for a little bit of the mix-up. So we're going to do some Y23 and blend that out. All right, we're going to do the colors once again. So we're going to do Y28, coloring up the left side of those little holes. Y26. All right. And finishing it up with some Y23. That way it looks like he's got shadowy little holes in his body that are still kind of the same color. All right, let's go ahead and focus on the inside of his mouth. So we're gonna color some RV34 first, which is dark pink. And I'm just gonna kind of go on the edge corners of his mouth. And then we're gonna do some RV32. And then we're gonna do some RV11. We'll go over those colors once again. So we've got some RV32. Oh, that was 3-4. I apologize. That was RV34. Now we're moving on to RV32. And finishing it off with some RV11. Alrighty. Next we're going to do his tongue. So from the tongue, I work from the bottom up. We're going to start with some RV14. And we're going to add then the mid-tone, which is RV13. Finishing it off with the highlight, which is that RV11 again. And it's interesting because we use the RV11 on the inside of his mouth, and now we're using it on the tongue, and it looks entirely different just because of what it's being blended with. We're going to go back with some RV14 just to make sure everything is nice and saturated. This is RV13. And going back to some RV, got a little bit of a roller, I'm so sorry, RV11. Alrighty. Let's go ahead, we'll do his teeth really quickly. His teeth, I just don't want to look the same color as the paper, so we're gonna go in with some C1, which is a super light, cool gray, just on the top. And then we're gonna blend that out with a little C00. And because I don't really care that the teeth look super highlight and shadowed, we're just gonna kind of do it once, and I think that's more than okay. All right, next what we're gonna do is we're gonna color up his shirt, and we're gonna start with some T4. So we're gonna go ahead, and it's gonna look a little dark at first because it is a white dress shirt. But I figured you gotta start dark, so at least then you can see the shadows and the highlights. All right, we're gonna do a little bit over here. We're gonna do on the sides of his tie and his little cuff. All right, and then, alrighty, perfect. Now we're gonna go in with some T2 to lighten it up. So T2. And do a little bit over here. Perfect. And finishing it off with some T0. We'll repeat these colors once again, which, because it's a white shirt, you probably could even skip it. It just depends on how saturated you want it to look and how well you want the colors to blend. We're gonna do it once more, but I'm just gonna be a little light-handed on the shadows. So we've got some T4. And then we're gonna do some T2. and then finish it off with some T0. Now it's nice and blended. It's gonna look a little dark at first. You guys can always change up colors if this is a little too dark for your liking, but it will lighten up as it dries. And I kind of like my whites to look a little bit darker just because then I know that I've done my shading. All right, we're gonna color up his tie next. I'm just kind of moving down his body. So we're gonna do some R29. We're just gonna kind of go like that. And then we're gonna do some R27. Carry out that red. And then finish it off with some R24. Yep, perfect. Just to get that highlight. Alrighty. Do some R29 again. And just to make sure I'm getting that shadow and highlight, I'm gonna skip the R27 on my second go around and just do some R24. Get a nice ombre. All right. Next, what we're gonna do is we're gonna color his pants, and we're gonna start with some E57. And we're gonna do a little around his tie. And a little on his legs. And we're gonna do some E55, which is light camel. And finish off with some E53. Get really nice and cute little khaki pants for him. All ready to go. Of course, we'll do it a second time. Now, if you guys do anything where you might color outside the line a little bit, like I do, I've done it a couple times already with this image. I like to go in and clean up with a white gel pen. We're going back with some E57, just because you can kind of clean those edges up. Or if you're somebody who, when you cut out an image, you cut right on the line, you'll never notice. I like to leave a little bit of a white border myself, but whatever floats your boat. See a nautical reference, how appropriate. All right. We're gonna finish off with some E53. Get those highlights in there. Alrighty, we are very close to being done. Actually, I do need to go back to my white shades just for a split second, just so I can do his little socks. So I'm gonna do the same color as his shirt, but I'm gonna start with T2. Oops, sorry. Just because I'm dealing with a very small space. And I'm only gonna blend it once, and we're gonna do some T1, or T0, I apologize, I misspoke. Alrighty, perfect. Now let's go ahead and color up his shoes. We're gonna do some T7. I'm doing just kind of the bottom. Now I'm gonna do my T5 because I want his shoes to be nice and dark, but still that I can see the highlight. And then we're gonna go in with some T3. Alrighty, let's do this once again. We're gonna go in with some T7. And then do some T5. And then finish off with some T3. And he is gonna be all good to go. All right. He is looking super cute and all colored up, you guys. So I've got him ready to go. So you can go ahead and fussy cut them out, run them through your scan and cut, however, or just put them right on a project, whatever fits your needs. So we are all done with our little scrub rectangle pants man, and he turned out really adorable. We did lots of yellow shading. Feel free to sub out any colors that might work for you. You don't even have to do rosy cheeks if you don't want. You can keep those yellow. You could do whatever you'd like with that. So if you've got any questions, you can always reach out and let me know, but we're just gonna go ahead and we're gonna move on to the next character. All right, guys, welcome to part 2 of the Underwater Buddies coloring tutorials. We're gonna start by coloring up this little swim trunk wearing starfish, and we're gonna start by using some RV14. So we're gonna go in, we're gonna go down his left side with some RV14. Do a little bit under his arm. And then to that side, all right. And we're gonna go in on this side. We're just gonna do a very thin line. Just because I don't want the shadow to be as prominent on this side. Go under his arm. Alrighty. Under the leg. Perfect. All right, next we're gonna do some RV13. So we're gonna go ahead, we're just gonna start carrying out those lines, making that shadow come out a little bit more. All right. Coloring this out with the RV13. The legs, and then before I put this away, I'm going back very quickly to my RV14, and I'm just going to do under the belly button and then this little divot up top, and then I'm going to take the RV13. I'm just going to kind of blend that out a little bit the best I can, and now we're going to move on to the next color, which is RV11. All right. Getting this nice and blended out. Under his arm, under his legs, and then a little bit with his belly button. Alrighty. We'll finish this off with some RV10. And I am going to be blending this a second time, doing a second round of coloring just to make sure he's all nice and blended. Like I keep saying, I like to do a second round of blending just because it saturates the paper and it gives me those nice blended lines. There's no sort of like harsh lines. And that way, when I do it, I don't have to feel self-conscious when I go through the first time that I have to overly focus on blending up these lines. Just kind of want to focus on getting the color there, and then we're going to reinforce it with another color, or the same color rather, on a second go around. All right, and then we're going to go back to the RV14, and actually what I'm going to do really quickly is I'm going to do his tongue the same color as well. Under his arm. On his left side, and then very thin lines on his right side. All right, under his arm, belly button and little divot, and then the leg, and then, all right. Next, we're gonna do some RV13. Just kind of keep on bringing those colors out. What a cute little starfish he is. I just think he's going to look so perfect, colored up, and you guys can use them, of course, in an adorable underwater scene. There's some really cute patterned paper that goes with him. You can put him on top of a Christmas tree if you wanted. You could make like a space-inspired card with him. All right, RV11. Bringing that color out just a wee little bit. A little bit with his tongue as well. And his arm and his legs. All right. Finish this off with some RV10. Right, get that good blending going on, making some circular motions just to get these colors nice and blended together. All right. Do a little bit under his legs. All right. Make sure all my lines are nice and blended, and I think we're just about there. All righty. So I think what I'm going to do really quickly is I'm just going to go over his tongue once again. This is RV14. I know I didn't put the lid down. We're going to go back with some RV13 and some RV11. All right, now we're going to do the inside of his mouth. So that's going to be RV34. And then we're going to do RV32. And then RV11. And we'll do it one more time. RV34. RV32. And RV11. If I can find it, there it is. All right. Perfect. Okay. Next, let's focus on his shorts, because really that's all that's left to color. And his shorts are like a lime green of sorts with some purple flowers. So we're going to go in with some YG09. So I'm just going to kind of go in. It's going to have some shadow over there, some shadow on this side of the leg, and then this little crease. A little bit of a shadow under this leg on each side. And then carry this out. All right. Next, we're going to do some YG06, which is yellowish green. And we are going to do a 4-color blend. This is one of my favorites in terms of lime greens. I use this often. And we're just going to kind of bridge it. And then we're going to go around this flower. And then on this pant leg. Perfect. We're going to do some YG03, which is yellow green. I think the last one I said was yellowish green. This is just yellow green. That's very creative naming. It's sarcasm, of course. All righty. And then finishing it off with some YG01. All right. We're going to go over these colors once again. So we're going back to the YG09, which is lettuce green. And we're going to do this side of his pant and then the underside of the pants and then this side of his shorts. Alrighty. Next is YG06, which is yellowish green, not YG03, which is yellow green. We're coloring with YG06. All right, and then by the pants. Alrighty. And we're going to do some YG03, which actually is yellow green. And a little bit under the pant. And we're going to finish this off with some YG01, which is green bice. All right. Making sure this is all blended the way that I need it to be. Perfect. And then we're going to finish off his shorts with some, there goes my lid, with some purple flowers. We're going to do some V06. So I'm just going to kind of go on the underside of the flowers. And then underside. All right, then we're going to go to some V04, which is lilac, and we're just going to kind of trace over these colors. And then we're going to use V01, which is Heath, to be the last in these blends. All right. And of course, we're going to do them one more time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my V06. And then we're going to do some V04. I'm going to push this in just a little bit. And V01. All right. Now, normally this is when I would call it and just be done. But what I want to do, because he's like, I don't know how to best describe it, but he's kind of like a rough textured character in my opinion, in terms of like physical characteristics. I don't know if you'd call starfishes like scaly, but I wanted to add a couple little bit of dot embellishments on him. So we're going to do some RV34, and these are going to be super light. And we're just going to kind of go where there was shadow and just kind of dotting. And this isn't going to be my only color. I'm actually going to do 3 different things. Next, we're going to go in with some RV69, which is not a color that I used in coloring him up, but it is a nice dark pink. And then we're gonna go ahead and finish this off with some white gel pen. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab my Sakura Jelly Roll number 10 white gel pen and just kind of add a couple white dots. Perfect. And he is all completed. He's got some cute little dots on him and he's ready to be put on a card. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this one and we're going to go ahead and move on to the next video. All right, everybody, let's move on to our third coloring video where we're going to color up this little tentacle man. And we're going to start by coloring up with a blue-green color palette. So what I'm going to start with is BG13. So I'm just going to start by going on the inside of his nose, a little bit down the side of the interior part of the nose. I'm going to go ahead and go around his head. And then just kind of moving my image around so I get a nice rounded line. And we're going to go ahead under his brow. On the inside of his eyelids. And around this part of his nose. All right. And then, all right, perfect. Under his little frown. And then I'm going to kind of trace the inside of his arm. And then do the same over here where there would be shadow. And then I'm going to go, since he doesn't really wear pants, I'm going to go under his neck. Don't forget about his neck. We're going to do up the leg, and then the interior leg and the bottom part, and then the behind leg, and the other behind leg where there would be shadow where it looks like it overlaps other parts of the skin. All right, next we're going to move on to some BG34, and it is going to be a 4-color blend for the most of his skin. I am going to go in with some dots at the end, so we're going with some BG34. We're just kind of bringing out those shadows. Now this color is very similar to the BG13. However, when I tested these out, this was the combination I used, and I just absolutely loved how he turned out. So I didn't want to change anything. And this is just very slightly lighter than the BG13, but I really think it plays a good role in it. All right. Under his brow. Under the second brow, perfect. Under his neck. Going to lightly go down his tentacles. All right. Next, we're going to go in with some BG32, which is Aqua Mint. And you know what? I just believe that I misspoke because he's actually going to be a 5-color blend for his body and then some embellishments on the end. So more like 6. It's okay. This is BG32, which is Aqua Mint. Keep going under those brows, and his eyelids, under his neck, under his arm. Alrighty. Next, we're going to do BG11, which is Moon White. And we're just going to keep bringing out those colors. Alrighty. And of course, we're going to do a second round of coloring on him. Once we finish with the last shade, which is BG10, and that's the wrong side, which is Cool Shadow. Get a nice blend out of it. And like I said, I am going to do 2 rounds of the coloring just to get a nice saturation. If that's not your jam, you can stop and fast forward to the part where I move on to his shirt. Or stick with me as I do a second round of coloring just so you can see how I like how it transforms. Perfect. All right, we're gonna go back in with some BG13 and we're just gonna repeat his coloring. So Going around his head. And then on his eyes. And then under the brow. And then under and around his nose. And then under that. Do a little bit under his neck. Up his arm. And a little bit with his body. All right, and then perfect. Now we're going to move on to the next color, which was that BG34, which is Horizon Green. And we're just carrying out those shadows. That's how I color. I just usually carry out the shadow. It's all a buildup. Under the brow. Under his neck. All right. Next is BG32. So we're going to go back in, bring out those shadows. Getting a really nice blend here by doing the second saturation of the coloring. Alrighty. Right. We're going to do some BG11. Under his brow. On the sides of his body, up his arms. And then finishing it off with some BG10. Making sure everything has a nice smooth blend to it. Alrighty. Next, let's move on to his shirt. This won't take too long. We're going to color his shirt up a nice tan color. We're going to start with some E37. Go up his arms, down the sides. And then we're going to move on to some E35. Go down his collar, up and around. All right. We're going to do some E34 next, which is Toast. It might be my favorite name for a Copic marker. Never helps when I'm hungry. And finishing it off with some E31. Alrighty. And of course, we'll go in and color it up one more time. We're going to do some E37. Go around his cuff of his shirt. Do some E35. Then do some E34. and finish it off with some E31. Perfect. All right, not too much left to color. We just got to do some of the under parts of his tentacles. So we're gonna go on do some BV04. And there's really not a lot where this goes. It goes at like the base of 2 feet and a little bit with that arm, or hand rather. We're gonna go on to some BV02. We're just gonna kind of carry those colors out. And then move on to some BV00, which is Mauve Shadow. And just kind of blend those colors out. And we'll go in one more time. So BV04. And BV00. Now, similar to the starfish, I feel like his skin would be kind of similar. So I want to speckle it just a tad. So I'm going to go in with some VG18, which is teal blue. I apologize, it fell over. And I'm just going to kind of, around his head, add some spots. And then I'm going to take my white marker. I just wanted to do it on top of his head. And this is entirely optional, but this is with my white gel pen. This is a Sakura Jelly Roll number 10 white gel pen. And he's all done. All right, our little tentacle man is all colored up to join his underwater buddies. So we're gonna go ahead and move on to the next character, which is the cute squirrel. Everybody, we are now on to part 4 of our Underwater Buddies coloring tutorial. And this segment, we're going to focus on coloring up this adorable little squirrel who lives underwater with her friends. So what we're going to start with is some of her fur. So what I would like to do is start with some E37, which is sepia. And she's got a couple different color tones going on with her fur. So we're going to start by coloring the top of her head. We're going to do a little bit of her ear. I'm just kind of going around her head, making my line a little bit thinner on the top. All right. Do a little bit of her ear. And then I also want, there's this little bit of her body that you can see under her helmet. So we're going to do a little bit there and a little bit there. And then she also has a little bit of her tail exposed. I'm so sorry, some of my markers dropped. And we're just going to kind of go around the curves of her tail. All right. So I'm going to set my E37 to the side. We're going to move on to E35. And we're just going to start bringing out those colors a little bit more. Just going over those shadows. All right, and then a little bit with her body. Perfect. Next color in the blend is going to be E34. Kind of going in. Doing a little bit under her head. All right, and then finishing off this blend with some E31. All right, just blending it out. We'll of course go over this once again before we're done. All right. Go back to the E3, 7. All right. We're going to go around with her tail. And then that little bit of her body that peeps out. All right, next we're going to move on is to E3, 5. All right. A little bit of her body. Sorry, I took the cap. Do some E3, 4 next. Then her body. And finishing off with the E3, 1. A little bit with her ears. And then that little bit of her body. All right, perfect. So that part of her fur is situated. Next, let's move on to her mouth area of her fur. So this one, we're gonna start with some E55, which is light camel. And I'm just gonna kind of go around the outside of her cheeks. Next, we're gonna go on to E53. And just because I forgot, I'm going to go back to my E55 for just a second. Back to the E53. And then finishing with some E51. Now, of course, we're going to go over this once again. So we're going to go back to the E55. Now on to some E53. I tell you guys, that nose section, I keep forgetting. Got to go back to it real quick. And before I finish, I do want to add a little bit of blush just because she's the only mammal in this lineup. So we're going to do some R24. Now some RV22. And then some RV21. Now I'm going to blend over this with some E51. And I'm going to go in over those cheeks with some RV21 just one more time. This just helps bring out a little bit of that rosiness. All right, let's work on the inside of her mouth. So let's start with not the tongue, but the actual inside. So we're gonna do some RV34. And we're just gonna kind of go there. Next we're gonna do, oh, you know what is also the same color? I apologize, with the RV34. Her nose, her poor neglected nose. Next we're gonna do some RV32. And some RV11. All right, we're gonna do this one more time. RV34. RV32. And RV11. All right, let's focus on her tongue. So we're gonna do some BV14, or I apologize, RV14. Oh my gosh, BV, could you imagine a blue-violet tongue? RV13. And RV11. We're going some RV14. Some RV13. And finishing off that tongue with some RV11. Now, if you did notice, I did get a little bit of pink on the inside of her tooth. So we're gonna focus on her teeth next, just so I can go ahead and get that blended out. We're gonna go in with some C1. We're just gonna do that on the top portion of her teeth. And then we're gonna go in with a little bit of a lighter color, which is C0. I don't like to oversaturate with teeth. I just might wanna make sure that it's not the same color as the white part of the paper. It might look a little dark at first, but it will dry. You know what, and I think what I'm gonna do really quick is I'm just gonna do a quick little C1 line on top, just so there's a little bit of a shadow. Perfect. All right, next what I wanna focus on is I wanna do her inside of her helmet. So what we're just gonna do is, sometimes with helmets or anything that glass covers, you can color over the whole image to make it look glassy. With her, I wanna keep her looking really cartoony. So we're just gonna color the helmet and make her head look the same color, so I'm not gonna be coloring over it. So we're gonna do some BG02, and that's the wrong side of my marker. All right, some BG02. I'm just gonna kind of go on the outside around our little flower. All right, and then we're gonna go up around and down the side. Perfect. Next, we're going with some BG01. I do like the BGs when it comes, BGs, not that I'm talking about any sort of musical group, but when it comes to colors, I like blue-greens for glass colors, because I think that little bit of a green in the blue gives it a nice glassiness. All right. We'll do some BG000. That'll be the last color in this blend. Just keep in mind when I am coloring the helmet part, I am keeping the shadow on the outer rim, and then closer to her head, I'm having the color get lighter. I just thought that this would look the nicest with her, but you do whichever style fits best for you. You could even leave her helmet white. You could use gray colors if you wanted to, but at least with this, with her being underwater, I thought blue was also appropriate because if you put her in a scene, it'll kind of look like you can see through to the water layer. All right, we're gonna go back to some BG02. Around the flower. And we're gonna go on this side, we're gonna go up. Perfect. We're gonna do some BG01. And some BG000. Just to finish it off. All right, let's do her flower next. So I'm gonna go ahead and use some RV17. And we're just gonna kind of go around the flower, around the center part of the flower, and then down each of the petal lines. Kind of keep it easy. I'm not a huge flower colorist. So, all right, we're just some RV14. Just kind of bringing out those colors. And then finishing off with some RV11. All right, we're gonna go through these colors one more time. So we're gonna do some RV17. Go back to some RV14. And finishing it off with some RV11. All right. Now I would like to focus on the inside of the flower. So I'm gonna go ahead and take some Y38. We're gonna do this little inside part. Another part that's the same color is this little patch right here is gonna be the same color. So I'm gonna do some Y38 down there. And then some Y35. And some Y32. Oops, sorry, wrong side. All right, we're gonna do these colors once again. Do Y38. We're gonna have to fix that, but that's okay. Getting a little bit of overage, but that's what gel pens are for. So we'll go ahead and fix that at the end. And then some Y32. All right, now we can focus on her body and her acorn. So what we're gonna do first is we're gonna color up her suit, and her suit's kind of a white gray color. So we're gonna go in with an N4, and I'm just gonna gonna go down each side of her body. And then she's gonna go ahead, she's gonna have a little bit of a shadow like that. And on the underside, and then we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna add shadows down her legs. And her boots are gonna be a little bit of a darker color. So we'll get to those when we do. So we're gonna do some N2. And finish it off with some N0. Alrighty, we're gonna go back in with some N4. Adding that shadow in. Some N2. And finishing it with some N0. Alrighty. So that's her suit for the, there's a little bit that I missed in the corner. Hold on. I'm going to color her boots next, but we are going to go back and add some accents to her suit. That's N6, and then we're going to go in with some N4. And then finishing with some N2. But we're going to go ahead and do these colors once again. We're going to do some N6. Some N4. And some N2. All right. Let's go ahead and get this little acorn colored up. Go ahead and put some markers away just because they're crowding my workstation. So we're going to do some E27. We're going to color this top part. And then the little bit that's in the badge. And then we're going to, that was E27. We're going to go in now with some E25. I'm using it actually for both portions. You'll see why in a second. Now for the highlight, we're going to use E23, which is hazelnut. But this E23 now will be the mid-tone for the body of the acorn. We're going to use that as the little badge. And then we're going to finish off with some E21. Perfect. All right, now we're going to do these colors once again. So we're going to do some E27. I'm not going to go over the badge again. There's not really much of a reason to since it's such a small space. Next is E25. Next is E23. And then it's some E2, I didn't do E2-3 on the top of the acorn, and then some E2-1 for the main part of the acorn. All right, we're done with the bulk of her outfit, but I do want to add a couple little embellishments. So I'm taking an R29 lipstick red, that's the wrong side, and we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna add some red dots. I've got for her shoes, and then we're gonna do for her arm, I wanna go ahead and kind of add a red dot around 2 of the 3 bands. Just like that. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to do B29 down the side of the 3rd band. All right, just for a little bit of detail. Now, like I said, I am going to go in and I'm going to try to clean up a little bit the mess that I made with her helmet. So I'm just going to take some BG000. I'm going to try to blend this out just a little bit to lighten it up. That's the nice thing about Copics is when you layer them, they kind of blend each other out. All right. But I still got some bleeding going on, so we're going to go ahead and fix that. So I've got my white gel pen. I just kind of like to clean up my edges. I kind of like to do small movements just to make sure I'm kind of dragging it down the side of the image, just to give it a nice little cleanup. It's not the perfect way to fix a blemish, but it works. And then what I'm gonna do for her helmet to kind of mask this is I'm gonna do a highlight down the side in a circle. And that'll kind of mask it. And you don't have to do that, but if you like the way that it looks, feel free to go ahead and do that for your image as well. But I am all done with my cute little squirrel. So we are done with part 4 of our coloring, and we're gonna move on to part 5, which is the Krabby Boss. Hello everybody, it is now time for part 5 of the Kindred Stamps Underwater Buddies limited edition color tutorial. So now we are going to move on to the Crab Boss, and he's just this greedy little crustacean that I'm so excited to color up in some of my favorite shades of red. So what we're going to start with is we're going to start by coloring up his shell, which of course would kind of be almost like his skin. So what we're going to start with is some R29. And we're just going to go in and do kind of the outline of him. All right, like that. We're going to do a little down his nose. We're also going to do a little bit of his arm. And then the inside part of his claw. Underneath the money, just like that. All right, and then for this arm, what we're gonna go ahead and do is we're gonna go on the side of his arm, down the right side, underneath his claw, and then we're also going to do the underside of the claw right there as well. We're gonna also add some red to his little eye embellishments. And then what we're gonna do is right here on his legs, we're just gonna do closest to his pant. Perfect. All right, next we'll move on to the next color in his blend, which is R27. And we're just gonna bring that red out more. And just kind of that. Around the claw, up the arm, a little bit more with his eyes. I'm probably not going to go back much with his eyes just because it's such a small space as it is. And then around the claw, and then the legs, just a little bit of the legs. Okay, and then he's done down the nose. Perfect. All right, next color is going to be R24, which is prawn, which might be the most appropriate name for any of the colors we're going to use for him. Which, I mean, he's not really a prawn, but it's a type of what? Shellfish. All right, just bringing out that red, making him look nice and crabby. Alrighty, a little bit on his leg. Perfect. Now we're gonna go in with some R22 just to start getting some of those highlights in. So we're gonna do, this is light prawn. Getting that nice red ombre for him. Alrighty. And then we're gonna do a little bit of R21. All right. It's kind of crazy that with him, after just a quick application of these red colors, you're already seeing him come to life. All right, let's go ahead and go back over these colors again. So we're gonna go back with some R29. Just like that, under the claw portion. Under his legs. And then I'm just gonna do a little bit more with his eye embellishment parts. Like I said, don't be too concerned about that area. There's not gonna be that much coloring going on over there. Going back to the R27. Around the claw, the leg, the other leg. Alrighty. And then, all right, we got both sides. And then we're gonna do some R24. Back to the prawn color, just kind of blending it out. And technically this prawn is his mid-tone, or the actual color that I want him to be, where the colors that I've already put down are his shadow colors, and the two colors I have left would be considered his highlights. All right, go back to R22, start lightening this up. Just like this, around his claw, his leg. All right. And then some R21, which is that sardonyx color, which is gonna finish him out. For the most part, I'm gonna do one last thing with a marker just to give him a little bit more detail. We'll do that right now. I have an R27 marker, which is a darker red, and I just kind of want to go down his nose, make sure his nose is just a little bit darker than the rest of his body. All right, cool. So he is all colored up for his shell. Let's go ahead and work on his mouth. So we're gonna do the inside of his mouth with that RV34. This has been pretty standard on all of the images that we've colored up so far. Next we're gonna do is RV32. Finishing it up with some RV11. And of course we will repeat these just to get that good blend going. We're gonna do some RV34. RV32. And some RV11. And this is pretty standard even when I color up human characters. I still use the same colors for inside my mouth for tongues and the inner mouth part. We're gonna do some RV14 for his tongue. Then do some RV13. And finish off with some RV11. And we're gonna repeat that real quick. So we're gonna go back to the RV14, RV13, and the RV11. Perfect. All right, we're gonna color up his eyes. His eyes are kind of interesting. And I actually broke out some markers I've never used before, but his eyes are kind of like a greenish yellow color. So we're gonna start with some YG45, which is cobalt green. And for this, what we're gonna do, this is gonna look really strange at first. We're gonna do the bottom part of his eye and then up the right side until we get about the center embellishment on top of his eyes. That's going to be about where we stop. So you want to keep it kind of thin, just like that. And then we're going to go in with some YG41, which is pale cobalt green. And we're just going to kind of add it on, bringing out that green color just a little bit more. And then we're gonna finish with what's really gonna lighten it up, which is some YG0000, which I believe is the lightest YG you can get. And it's got a lot more yellow in it, in my opinion, than green. So this is gonna be the final color for his eye. And it's really gonna lighten it up and make it look more yellow than we initially thought it would. So we got this, we're gonna do this eye. I'm also going to add some gel pen embellishments at the very end of the coloring, just to give these a little bit more of an eyeball look. And I'll show you what I mean by that later on. I always like to do gel pen accents at the end. We're going back to the YG45. Just because doing them at the end, I don't have to worry about my hand needing to go over the image at all for any other coloring and get any sort of smudges. Go back to the YG41. I kind of like to think that his eyes are green because he sees money in every opportunity. I don't know if I'd say green with envy, maybe more green with greed. But that's kind of my theory about why his eyes are more on the green side than just like a light bluish green. And of course, when you're coloring this, it's gonna look darker when you're coloring it up than it will later. They do dry and the colors do always get a little bit lighter. We're gonna color up the little dollars that he's got in his hand right now. These won't take too long. I don't do anything too special with these. We're gonna do some YG17, just down this side, on the top of this dollar, down the side of that dollar, and then on the side, perfect. And then we're gonna do some YG13, which is chartreuse. And we're just gonna kind of go in. You really could take a little bit more time to make the dollars very nice and pretty if you wanted to. Add some different colors in there. I just think that you don't need to necessarily, at least in my opinion. So we're gonna go in, we're gonna darken them up just a little bit. I did say yiddle, like with a Y. All right, go back to the YG13. And finish off with some YG11. Perfect. All right. Next, let's move on to his shirt. Now, his shirt, what I'm going to be coloring it up with, it might look just a tad darker than what you would think, but I really like it looking this way. So we're going to start with some BG16, and I'm going to do some very thin lines. I'm going to go under his collar. All right. Now we're going to do some BG14, which is light blue. Just kind of bring those shadows out a little bit. All right, now we're going to do some B12. Oop, I've just noticed I missed a spot with the B14. So this is B14. We're going to go back and add a little bit of a line under his collar. Go back in with the B12. And we're going to finish this off with some B00. Just to really lighten it up. Of course, we'll do the colors a second time in just a minute. All right. Go back with the B16. Moving on to B14. B12. And finishing with some B00. Alrighty. Just while I'm over here, I'm gonna really quickly give him a white undershirt. So I'm gonna do some N1 and blend it out with a little bit of N0. Sorry, N0. Perfect. All right, now we'll move on to his pants. We're gonna do some purple pants. So he's gonna get some V25. Do a little bit by that, a little bit on his leg for the shadow, a little bit up here. And on the other side of his claw. Perfect. Next, we're gonna move on to some V22, which is ash lavender. And don't be afraid to bring that shadow out kind of far, because we're only gonna do a 3-color blend for his pants. Finish off with some V20. All right, we're gonna go over these colors once again. So it's V25. I'm gonna carry that down his leg and then around the zipper. Move on to V22. And finishing off with some V20. Alrighty. Next, we're gonna do his belt. We're gonna start with, we're gonna start with his belt. So we got some N28. Then we've got some N6. I don't know if I said 28. It was N8. Now we're on N6. And then we're going to do some N4. I'm kind of making it so each segment has its own little highlighted area. All right, we're going to go back in with some N8. N6. And N4. We are almost done coloring him up. We're gonna do a little bit of a gold belt buckle. And this is how I kind of do gold, is I like to do Y28. Do it in the two corners. And then I'm gonna move on to Y26, which is mustard. And then we're gonna go on to some Y21, which is buttercup yellow. And we're gonna really quickly just go back over it. We're gonna go back to that Y28. Y26. And Y21. And that's the last bit of the markers, but like I said, I do want to go ahead and add a couple bit of gel pen embellishments to him, just because of him being a crab and having a shiny shell. I feel like he would have some parts that would be like metallic-y or shiny. So what we're gonna go ahead and do is with my white gel pen, I'm gonna go ahead and just do a little bit of a swoop and dot. And we'll do under here, we'll do another swoop and dot, swoop and dot. And then for his eyes as well, I'm just gonna do up here a swoop dot and a swoop dot, just to give him a little bit of a shiny look to him. And he is all done and ready to be put on a card. So we are done with part 5, and we're gonna move on to part 6, which is the evil mini henchman. Now we are on to part 6 of our 7-part Underwater Buddies Kindred Stamps limited edition color tutorial. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to color up this little evil henchman, and we are going to start by coloring him with this BG96 color, which is one of the very last Copic colors that I have accumulated, and it's called Bush. And I'm just going to kind of go down the side a little bit with his arm. And then we're going to do a little bit on top of his hand over here, a little bit with his arm, a little bit under his leg, a little bit with his hand, and then I'm also going to do on top of each break with his antennas. Alrighty. And this one's going to be a real quick color because he's a little character. We're going to move on to some BG93. And you do it underneath with its arm, carrying up his antennas a little bit. And finish with some BG90. We're going to do this a second time just to get a real nice blend out of them. Going up. All right, perfect. We're going to go in one more time. We're going to go in with some BG96. Some dots for his antenna. All right, and then we're going to go with some BG93. And finish out with some BG90. Just making sure we've got nice, smooth blending going on with no harsh lines. Alrighty. See, we've already got like 90% of them all colored up. So we just got to worry about the inside of his mouth now. So we're going to do some RV34. And some RV32. And RV11. And we're going to do RV34. RV32. And RV11. All right, now we're going to do his tongue. So we're going to do some RV14. RV13. And RV11. We'll do these colors one more time. So RV14, RV13, and RV11. All right, we're almost done. We just got his teeth left. So all I'm doing for his teeth is I'm taking a C1 marker. We're going to kind of do the outsides. We're going to take a COO marker and just do the center parts. And then we're going to go ahead and go back to that C1, and I'm just going to add a little bit of shadow. And we're all done. He is all colored up and ready to be put on a card. Super easy. We've got one last small character left, the pet snail, and then we are on to part 7. So stay tuned. We've got one more part to go. Hello, everyone. We are at our 7th and final part of the Kindred Stamps Underwater Buddies limited edition box coloring tutorial, and we are finishing up with this super cute and vibrant little pet snail. So what we're going to start with is I'm going to start with some YG01, and we don't use a lot of it, but what I do with it is I just kind of go down the bottom edge of the snail. And then I'm going to take YG000, which is lily white, and I'm just going to kind of blend on top, and we'll come back to those later. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some BG02, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a little of that to his eye socket, or not his eye sockets, but his eyelids. a little bit down his eye towers. I don't know, we'll call them eye towers. And then we're gonna go down his shell. All right, next we're gonna do BG01, which is aqua blue. And we're just gonna take those blue colors and we're going to extend them just a tad. And then we're going to take BG000, and this is going to be our blue-green portion highlight. And I'm kind of using this and that YG0000. There's 4 zeros, the lily white, and that sort of bridges the gap when it comes to the bottom part of his sluggish body. So you get like a nice little blend. All right. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to repeat this, but I'm going to go in the blue order. I'm going to do BG02. We're going to go down the body, under the shell. Perfect. And then BG01. And then BG000, which is that pale aqua. And then we're going to do some YG01. And finishing off with some YG0000, that lily white. And that's going to get a nice blend between the blue-green and the yellow-green. All right. Next, we're going to do his eyes. His eyes are very similar to that of the crab, so we're going to go ahead and do the same sort of colors. So we've got, wrong side of the marker. We've got YG45 of the cobalt green. And I'm just going to kind of go on the right side of his eyes. Then we're going to do YG41. And then we're going to blend it out with some YG0000, that same lily white color. All right, we're going to go back to YG45. Then to RG41. And then YG0000. Perfect. And then I'm going to go ahead. I have an R29 marker, and I'm going to use this to very lightly trace around the black part, the pupil of the snail's eye. Alrighty. Just like that. Perfect. I'm also going to take some of my BG02, and I'm just going to lightly put some dots on his body. Like that. And maybe a little bit up there. Perfect. All right, we're really just onto his shell now. And for his shell, what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I've got some RV34, which we've used in every single character up to this point, I believe. So we're gonna go ahead and just do the left part of his shell, since it's backed up to his body. And then we're going to do some RV32. And finish it off with some RV11. Trying my best to go around these little dots. I am going to try to color those in after. All right. We're gonna go and we're gonna color again. We're gonna go back in with some RV34, which is dark pink. And then we're gonna do some RV32. And then some RV11. Alrighty. Perfect. What I'm gonna do next is I have a 2-color blend that I like to layer for his little swirl. So we're gonna take some RV66 and go on the inside of his little snail shell. And then I'm gonna go over it in some R37. Just because it'll get a nice kind of between that red and that raspberry color. And we'll go over it a second time. And then going over it in the RV, or I apologize, just R37. All right, we're almost there. We've just got a couple little dots. So I've got some BV04. And we're gonna do some BV02. And we're gonna do it with some BV04 again. Oop, fell over, I'm so sorry. And BV02. We're gonna do a little bit of a gel pen accent just to finish him up. I've got my white gel pen, which I've used for a handful of these guys already. And I'm just gonna do a swoosh and dot at the bottom of his shell. And he is all done and colored up. So we have all of our images that we colored up today. So I'm gonna go ahead and set this to the side. So we started with our yellow spongy guy. Then we moved on to the starfish friend. After that, we moved on to the tentacle man. After the tentacle man, we colored up the cute little squirrel. We colored up the greedy crabby boss, the little henchman, and the snail. So we are all done, you guys. We have all of the characters from the box all colored up. This is the Kindred Stamps Underwater Buddies limited edition box. I hope you guys are loving it and all the goodies that are inside. I hope you enjoyed your gummy candy, that you got some use out of the new die cut and built your own pineapple house. I just think that these guys are super cute. So I can't wait to see you guys have these all colored up and on your own projects. Be sure to share them on the Kindred Stamps fan club. So thank you guys so much for being here, for being Kindred Stamps fans. We love sharing these boxes with you guys, and we'll see you guys around next time.